Hey guys, Dustin with the PPC Pros doing this quick video because I want to save you a whole bunch of headache, whole bunch of time and frustration when it comes to optimizing your Google Ads campaigns and doing it with bad data. Oh my gosh. This is something that I've noticed mainly with e-commerce clients or with clients who do lead generation and they're importing sales back into their CRM, like previous sales or some other kind of a data import. But I see this most of the time. I'd say 95% of the time we run into these confusions or having to explain things to people or clients. This is on an e-commerce store. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about making decisions on your data before you really should. And that's a little different for different stores, different people. Why? Because in some cases, there are people who do purchases. Maybe you sell products that are very, impulse driven. They're very, quick. They see it. They click on it, there's really no research, they buy it, and that's it, right? Those are clients that don't usually have this issue too much. But in other cases, where maybe it's like a B2B or a very technical type of product or something that requires some research, some reviews, whatever, or a very competitive market, you can have anywhere from a few days to more than 2 weeks of a lag time. A lag time being the sales period between a person clicking on your ad and then making the decision to actually buy the product. And so I want to show you how you can tell what that is and explain to you a little bit about why you don't want to do that. Okay, so the reason you don't want to do that is pretty darn obvious, right? It's just like, you have a recipe for a meal and it says, bake for 45 minutes and you're baking this thing, but then 25 minutes into the baking, you take it out, you start eating, and you wonder why it tastes like crap. Okay, that's what you do with your data, that's what you do with your account if you're optimizing too early in the sales lag. So what that looks like is Google will report your clicks, your impressions, how much you paid them, your traffic costs. They'll report that in near real, well, I wouldn't say real time, but within, hours, okay? Definitely within a day. Depends how big your account is. So you'll see that pretty much right away. What you don't see is the revenue part, right? If somebody takes 3 or 4 days to make a purchase, then you're not seeing the revenue side of it. So it looks like, man, I'm spending, but I'm not getting the result that I want. And how does this play out in real life? So typically how this plays out is we'll get a freaked out client sometimes if they don't understand this, or maybe they're one of those guys that they know enough to be dangerous. They were running their own ads for a while, doing things this way. Maybe they've taken some of these courses where I'm not even going to go into that. But anyway, they're looking at their account every day. They're watching it and they're looking at the data for that day and they're making decisions on it. Or they're looking at, okay, yesterday was bad, we need to do this, blah, 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 blah. And they start to notice, typically, if they ever even have sales, that it starts to shrink. And it starts to shrink because they're being too restrictive. And so what happens is you start seeing, okay, well, I spent $100 yesterday, right? That's pretty much real-time data. That's going to be accurate. But I only made 300 or I only made 200, whatever the actual number is. But what you don't see is that 200 only represents maybe 40%, 70% of your actual revenue if you gave it enough time. And so I want to show you how you can see this. Enough talking. Let's start walking here. All you need to do, number one, you have to have conversion tracking that's working in your account. If you don't, and obviously revenue tracking if we're talking e-commerce, if you don't have that set up, that is the first thing you want to do, and then you can look at this maybe in a few weeks or a month later. So next you want to go to your tools and settings and click on attribution. A lot of people don't even know this section exists. So this might be something new to you, which would be cool. And so what I'm going to do is I'll use a little bit longer date range. I'm going to go back 90 days. Why? Because I want to have a pretty decent data set in terms of how many visitors we got. I want to look at probably the last 90 days. Give it a big window. You can play with this. I don't think it changes the averages all that much personally. And then I'm going to, in this case, we have some leads and some purchases that come from this particular account. So what I'm going to do is look for the actual conversion. This is the purchase. And you can see that changed dramatically, the interaction. So if you look at this top section, there's a lot of good information here, guys. So you can play around with this another time. But I just want to talk about the path analysis, which by default will show you two things. Your ad interactions, that's how many clicks typically people take before this conversion in this period of time based on this date range, okay? So I can see that 47% of the time, people are clicking more than once. They're clicking 2 or more times, I should say, all right? And then within days, which is really what we're talking about today, 50% of people, or 49%, take 2 days or more to convert. Okay, you're like, wow, big deal. I'll wait 2 days. It gets a little bit better. So if I click on path metrics, this is going to give us a lot more insight into those numbers. And you can see on average, it takes 8.3 days for a conversion to happen. Now you're going to see, I'll show you in a minute, some happen much faster than that, quite a bit of them actually. But then there's this lagging period of, in our case, about 20% of the sales that you don't see if you look, even within that 8 days. So here's what we can look at. So we know that on average we have about 2 interactions to conversion. That's pretty interesting. But 8.5 days. So I'll just move myself out of the way for a moment. Didn't exactly work. Okay, but we'll look at this section down here. So what we can see right here is the days of conversion column right here. And that's basically saying, I'm just going to move this over a bit so I can see. It really does not help much, does it? Sorry, guys. Well, whatever. It does help a little bit. Okay, so we can see that the days from the last interaction, not the first interaction, the last. We're going to just do it from the first for just a second. Okay. So people who, from the first click that we got, the first one, people that converted in less than a day represents, we had 83 conversions, represents 46% of the conversions and only 37% of the conversion value. And within, a day from that, so we're talking about 50%, right? So there's like 46 and change percent of people, of conversions happening in less than a day. We add another 5% of that to say within a day. So within a day, if I'm making a decision, I'm looking at yesterday's data, I am probably looking at about half of the revenue data I should be. Okay, I'm going to just jump a little bit further down the list here. But here we go to our 8-day mark. And within our 8-day mark, we can see that we have roughly, 50, 55. So here at the 8-day mark, we have roughly, I'm just adding them all together, shorthand, about 60% of our revenue showing, revenue and conversions showing. So, and a little bit more of the conversions, a little bit less of the revenue is showing in that time. So that tells me even after the 8.3 days that you're seeing here, I'm still missing about 40% of the revenue in conversions that we should have expected. And as you scroll down further, look at this, 12 plus days. I used to be able to open that up and you would actually get to see even more past this. I don't know why they don't let you do that anymore, whatever. But in 12 plus days, now we're almost talking 2 weeks, this could go up to 30 days. 68 more conversions happened. What was the total? It doesn't tell me the total. Okay, so 68 more conversions happened, $21,000 in revenue. And we have, this represents 40%, guys. 40% of the sales happen. Now, this is like a B2B. It's not 100% B2B, but there's a lot of B2B here and some kind of B2C. So I do expect it to be a bit of a lag time for sales. But if you're reporting on the results of your data prior to this, you're missing the boat. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't work on your account, you don't optimize things for weeks at a time. That's not what it means, but it does mean that you consider this when you're looking at the numbers. Maybe you just consider that, you know what, I see we're off here, I see that, but I know that we're not looking at the whole picture, so I want to give this more time. I want to look at a bigger date range. I want to, really just factor this in. I don't want to make rash decisions, and I don't want to look, last 7 days and then make decisions on only that data. Maybe I want to look at the last 30 days to account for some of this time and ignore the last 7 days, right? That would be another strategy that we also do in some cases. We'll ignore, anywhere from 3 days to whatever. We'll see the traffic trends. We'll keep an eye on the traffic trends, right? If traffic completely drops, even if it's within those last 3 days, we're going to pay attention. But in terms of the revenue and ROAS and that sort of a thing, you really can't do that. So anyway, guys, the whole point is that this is an extreme example. I honestly, most clients don't miss out on 40% of their revenue for weeks at a time. But I just wanted you to see this is a very common, well, a little less common. Sometimes what we'll see here is about 20%. Really depends on the client, but it can be anywhere from 10 to 20% is probably more what we see on the 12 plus days. And if we go up to 7 days, usually we'll find out we're missing about 20 to 30% of the revenue after about 7 days for most of the clients we work with. You might be, your account could be different. If you're an agency, your clients might be different. I'm not here to say you're missing out on 20, 30%. I'm just here to tell you how to find out if you're missing out on it and if you're making decisions based on that. So I hope you found this helpful. If it wasn't helpful, well, I guess you can keep that to yourself. But if it was, or if you had questions or comments, go ahead and post that below. And thanks for watching.